Okay, so today we're going to be working on graphing functions, okay? You guys have done this before, okay? Does anyone remember what's the equation of a line that we like? Y equals mx plus b. So y equals mx plus b. Does anyone know what kind of, what form this is? Does anyone know what this is called? This is called slope intercept form. Slope intercept form. Okay, does anyone know why it's called slope intercept form?
Because it has
Mainly because, what does this B stand for? What is that called?
y-intercept.
The y-intercept. Okay, the y-intercept. And what does the M stand for?
Slope.
That's the slope. So if an equation is in this form, it's called slope-intercept form because you can read the slope and the intercept without doing any work. Okay, so that's why it's called a slope-intercept form. What is the y-intercept? What does that mean? Like, what is a y-intercept?
Where it goes on the line.
What does the word intercept mean? Go through, okay? So where it goes through, it intercepts the y-axis. That's why it's called a y-intercept. It's where the line goes through the y-axis. And the y-axis, is that the up and down or the side-to-side one?
Up and down.
The up and down. Okay, so that's why a y-intercept is called a y-intercept. It's where it goes through or intercepts the y-axis. So, instead of slope and y-intercept, I think when we're graphing, I think they should have different names. Okay? I think that B, I've never understood, and I'm a math teacher, I don't understand why B stands for y-intercept. Okay? Somewhere a long time ago, some random mathematician decided that B was a good thing for y-intercept. Okay? I like to think of B as beginning. Okay? B stands for where to begin. Okay? And I'll show you why I say that in just a second. M stands for move. Again, I have no idea why they picked M to stand for slope. Makes no sense to me. Okay? So I say that B stands for begin and M stands for move. So if we were going to graph these functions, okay? First off, let's identify what is the slope and the y-intercept. What's the y-intercept in this equation?
1.
Nope. Y-intercept
Oh, next.
is the part at the end, okay? So your y-intercept is -6. I'm going to say that y-intercept, the B stands for begin. So you begin your graph at -6. So on the y-axis, we're going to count down -6. So count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's actually going to be off the graph, but that's okay. And put it on. Then, in my opinion, M stands for how you move. Okay, what's the slope in this equation? So we know that the y-intercept was -6. What's the slope? Slope is the number attached to the x. It's not the x. Okay, so the slope here is a 1. Okay, so slope is equal to 1. And I like to make it a fraction, so slope is 1 over 1. So from your beginning point, your y-intercept, you move, M stands for move, up 1, over 1. Up 1, right 1. Up 1, over 1. Now, as soon as you have 2 solid points, okay, as soon as you have 2 dots, you can connect the dots with a line, and you're done. Okay, so graphing each function. We start from the y-intercept, that's your B. B is where you begin. M is how you move. Okay, so let's try this next one. What is the y-intercept of this line? What's the y-intercept of this line? Whoa, I want to call on someone. Javier.
Oh, why me?
Because I picked you. What's the y-intercept of this line?
Y-intercept is
What number is the y-intercept?
-3.
-3, okay? So the y-intercept is always the one at the end, okay? So at the end of the equation, okay? So the y-intercept is at -3. So B stands for begin. So I'm going to begin my picture at -3. Then M stands for how you move. What's the slope of this line? What's the slope of this line, Alex? 2. So that's your slope. Okay? So if I wanted to make that into a fraction, how would I write that as a fraction? 2 over 1. So that means from here, you began at -3, and then we move up 2 over 1 to make your next dot. Once you have 2 dots, you can connect them with a line. Now, we're also going to talk about something today called continuous and discrete graphs. Okay? Do you think that these lines are continuous or are they discrete? What does continuous mean? It keeps going. Okay? Continuous means that it's a solid line. Okay? So continuous is a solid line. Okay? There's also something called discrete. Discrete is just points. Okay, and we're going to get to some pictures that are just points. Okay, so like when we talked about is something a function last week, remember how sometimes there's just random points and we decided if it a function or not. If it's just random points, that's called a discrete graph. If it's a solid line, that's called a continuous graph. Okay, so you will need to know the difference between those two. How about number 3? Y equals 1 minus x. What's the y-intercept in that line?
1.
Is this written the right way? Is this written in slope-intercept form? No. We need to rearrange it, okay? I do not want you to do anything to rearrange it to be in slope-intercept form. And all that means is the x part has to come first. So if I was going to rewrite this, the y stays exactly where it is. What's attached to the x right here? A -1, so just negative x, and then what sign is attached to this? A +1. Now, once it's rearranged, now I can determine that what's the y-intercept of this line? +1 is your y-intercept. And what's the slope? -1. -1 is your slope. Now we can draw our graph. So you begin, okay, B stands for begin, so begin at +1. And then M stands for move. We move down 1 over 1. Move down 1 over 1. Once you have 2 dots, connect the dots with a straight line, and you're done. Okay, so my understanding is I heard, at least from first period, that when you first learned how to graph, it was a lot more complicated than this when you learned first semester. Okay, I would like to make it as simple as possible. So that is as simple as I can make it, and hopefully it's a little bit easier to understand than whatever you guys learned first semester, because I wasn't here. Anyone have questions on how we graph? So always start at your y-intercept, because B stands for begin, and then M stands for move. You move your slope, and remember, you're moving from the first point. Okay, not from 0, 0, not from the origin, but from the first point. Okay, the next one, for number 4, it says the farmer's market sells apples for $2 per pound and oranges for $1 per pound. Marjorie has $10 to spend. The function y equals 10 minus 2x represents the number of apples x and oranges y Marjorie can purchase. Graph the function and interpret the points graphed. So it's telling you that apples is the x. So x part, this is telling you the number of apples she can buy. The y is telling you the number of oranges she can buy. You need to label that. If you don't label it, it's going to be difficult to interpret. And interpret, all that means is tell me what this graph is saying. Okay? For this one, if I want to graph this, what's wrong with the way it's written right now? It's kind of backwards. Okay? So how do I rewrite that? Y equals, how would you rewrite that? Negative 2x plus 10. So I just want you to rewrite it. Okay? If I ask you here, what is the y-intercept of this line? The y-intercept would be 10. So that means you start your point at 10. And then how do you move to get to the next point? The slope tells you how to move. So what does this negative 2 tell you? How do I move to get to my next point? What does negative 2 tell you? Down 2 over what? 1. 2 over 1. Now, if you look at this graph, what do you notice here? These are going in increments of 2. And these are going in increments of 2. So if you move down 2 over 1, it's not really on this dot, okay? It's right here. Now, can I just make a solid line now that I have two things, 2 dots? Why can I not just make a solid line? Because it's not a what? It's not a dot. What does that mean? No, no, tell me, yeah, you're on the right track. But why? Why can I not just make a solid line? Because what am I talking about here? Apples and oranges. Can you go to a farmer's market and buy fractions of fruit?
Yep.
No, you can't. You're not supposed to, okay? And we're not talking about the free samples that they give you or whatever, okay? But here, you actually have to make dots, okay? You do not connect these. This is an example of a discrete graph, okay? So here, what does this point tell you basically? That for $10, she could buy what? This point is 0, 10. 0 what? 0 apples and 10 oranges. That's what that point tells you. What point would this be right here? Over 1, 8. What does 1/8 tell you?
1 apple.
She could buy 1 apple. Thank you. And 8 oranges. Right? So when it tells you to graph the function and interpret the points graphed, is that the only options she has? To buy either 0 apples and 10 oranges or 1 apple and 8 oranges? Are those the only options she has?
No.
How do I find out her other options? Keep graphing. Okay? So the next one you would go down 2 over 1. Okay, what point would that be? What point is this? 2, 6. So if you interpret that, what does that mean? 2 apples, thank you. 2 apples, 6 oranges. Are you done yet? How do you know when you're done?
When you get to
When you get to 0. Okay? Your next point would be what? Go down 2 over 1. What would be your next point? What's halfway in between 2 and 3? 2 and 4, sorry. 3. And what point is this? Over 3 up 4. So what does that tell you? She could buy 3 apples and 4 oranges. Are we done? Not quite. Okay, next one, go down 2 over 1. And then again, down 2 over 1. Okay, what would be this point right here? Over 4 up what? 2. And this last point is what? Over, in between 4 and 6 is 5, 0. So she could buy 3 apples, 4 oranges. She could also buy 4 apples and 2 oranges. And my last option is 5 apples, 0 oranges. Okay, so when it says interpret these points, that's what that means. Tell me, what are my options? Okay, I have $10 to spend. This is how much everything costs. What can I buy? You might need to know that at some point in life. Okay? Or, and I know that you guys probably aren't doing much of, going to the farmer's market right now in your life. But it's like, okay, your mom gives you $10 to spend for lunch. Okay? What if you want to buy sodas and candy bars or something like that? Okay? That might be a little more realistic for you guys, but you can see how this would be useful. Hopefully. A little bit. Well, deal. Okay. Next one. Last one. It says fancy goldfish. Fancy goldfish is the X. Okay? So automatically, let's label this. Okay? The X is fancy goldfish. Cost $3 each, and common goldfish, so plain goldfish basically, not fancy ones, cost $1 each. graph the function y equals 20 minus 3x to determine how many of each type of goldfish Tasha can buy for $20. So, first off, what's wrong with this graph? It's backwards. It's not in slope-intercept form. How would you write this in slope-intercept form? Y equals what? Negative 3x plus 20. So you just have to rearrange it. Okay, you don't have to do any multiplication, division, nothing like that. Just rearrange it. So here, what is the y-intercept of this graph? 20 is your y-intercept. What's your slope? Negative 3. This is your slope. Okay, or how you move. Y-intercept is where you begin. Slope is how you move. Now, what's the measurements here? What does each line represent? How many does each line represent? So two lines represent 8. How much would just one line represent? 4. So you might need to write in the scale here. Okay? Between 8 and 16 would be what? 12. And then the next is here 20. Okay, so it might help you if you wrote those down. So if we're going to start at 20, okay, make your first point, our y-intercept is at 20. What does this 1 point tell me here? This is over 0 up 20. What does that tell me? She could buy 0 what?
Fancy.
0 plain, no, 0 fancies. 0 fancy goldfish. And 20, you can write common, or I like the word plain better. Not just common. Okay? Now, how would I get to my next point?
You go down 3.
Use the slope. Down 3 over what? Over 1. So down 3 over 1, what point would this actually be?
At 117.
This is over 1 and up how many? It's not quite 16, but if I go down 3 from 20, that's 1 comma 17. This is not a very good scale on the side, okay? But I did this on purpose on your notes because some of the stuff on your homework is like that, and I don't want it to throw you off. So that means that I could buy 1 fancy goldfish and 17 plain. To get to my next point, down 3 over 1. So over at 2, if I buy 2 fancy goldfish, how many plains would I be able to buy? If I went down 3 from 17, I would get to what?
14.
14. So that means I could buy 2 fancy, 14 plain. Okay, what would be my next point? What's my next point? Who can tell me what's my next point going to be if I go down 3 over 1?
3 fancy and
3, 11. Exactly. Okay. From there, what would I be at? Over 4 up what? If I go 3 down from 11, what would I be at? 4, 8. Can we keep going? Down 3 over 1 would put you at what? 5 and what? 5. Okay, if I keep going, down 3 over 1, I would be at what? 6 comma 2. Okay, can I go down any further than that? No, because then you'd be at negative. Can I buy negative goldfish?
yes.
No, no one's going to pay me. No, that's not buying negative goldfish. Negative goldfish would be they're paying me to take the goldfish. That doesn't usually happen even if they're dead.
That would happen
They're going to pay you to take the goldfish?
if you're sponsored.
Okay, good for you. That sounds like a great business deal for you. Okay, so determine how much of each type of goldfish Tasha can buy for $20. So she could buy 0 fancy, 20 plain, 1 fancy, 17 plain, 2 fancy, 14 plain, 3 fancy, 11 plain. I'm not going to keep writing these words. I'm just going to do this. This means continue. Okay. So 3 and 11. My next one was 4 fancies and 8 plain. 5 fancy, 5 plain, and my last option was 6 fancy and 2 plain goldfish. Okay, so this is not only just graphing but also interpreting what do those points mean. Okay, do we have questions on how I did that? So it might take a little bit of practice, but I think you guys will be good on it.